There was no gunshot from behind me at all, nor any spattering blood. Da können wir ja das Gegenteil beweisen mit der Kamera. Jetzt kommt die Kamera endlich zum Abschluss. Zum Abschluss nicht, zur Verwendung. Zum Abschluss, alles klar, Tom.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you remember this camera? But there is a camera from that fateful night. Yes, we borrowed it from the House of Horrors. It's a camera you took with you to the cemetery that night, Mr. Drebber. And is that supposed to be significant? This kind of camera is rarely seen in our homeland, so my colleague and I were keen to examine it closely. We noticed that the lens extends forwards on the end of some bellows. Like this.
Hold it!
What's that? They're just on the bellows. It looks like a dark wet stain. Ah! That's right. It's a rather conspicuous mark here on the bellows, in fact. Good lord! Are you suggesting... Yes, my lord. It would appear to be a spatter of blood. Something that could be confirmed with a simple chemical test. Isn't that right, Dr. Theis? Scythe? Das TH ist echt schlimm. It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood, and not the blood of some animal. But yes, to test whether or not it's blood at all is simple enough. I propose that Madame Tuspel's testimony was correct, and that on the night in question, 10 years ago, you were spattered with blood from the gunshot wound. Well, and that furthermore, you really did witness a condemned professor emerging from his tomb. Ah! There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you are trying to hide the fact that you saw the professors that night.
Objection!
But why? Why would you want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. For whose then? Who could benefit? Mr. Drebber is obviously lying in order to protect somebody. My goodness, he's shielding someone. Yes, my lord, and clearly, it's someone who doesn't want the truth about the professors coming back to life to be exposed. Well, counsel, who is it then? Who is this witness trying to protect by lying about what he saw that night? Dr. Courtney Theis, natürlich.
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Scythe. Scythe. Whatever do you mean? Imagine if the convict who'd been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine if that was to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine if the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer. If it was the professor, that would be an unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
This is beyond a joke. Need I point out that the dead cannot come back to life? What you're suggesting would mean that the execution never actually happened. Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
Objection!
Once a man is sent to the gallows, he hangs. No one could escape, not in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging. If that were really true, counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at the supervising coroner. It would taint the honor of the entire judiciary, from the ground up. And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Scythe would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose the secret. Even if that meant being complicit in a crime. You mean... I mean that Dr. Seiss wasn't collaborating in Mr. Dweber's wicked scheme. She was cursed into collaborating, in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Assman with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Ah! Pray forgive the discourtesy, sagt er jetzt bestimmt. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Lord van Zieks. Pray forgive my freshly filled hello jealous. And a whole raft of other discourtesies now. Okay, oder so ähnlich. Goodness me. It's just the sort of tall tale Londoners would enjoy, I grant you. An executed killer rising from the dead. A Scotland Yard cover-up. A conspiracy at the highest levels. So let me ask you one thing. What's that? If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger and disposed of him forever? Well, I have no idea at the moment. We have too little information to work that out at present, I think. I couldn't agree more. The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies. And have you considered this, my learned Nipponese friend? Considered what? Do you realize just what a dangerous endeavor it would be to curse this woman into such criminal activity? It's tantamount to declaring war on the entire British police force and judiciary. Quite. Hard to imagine any sum of money being offered for research could warrant it. To rely on some stage deception when so much is at stake would be madness. Well, I suppose... And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who'd already invested money in the venture and would be instrumental in future profits too. Yes, I had no reason to kill Mr. Assman at all. Or are you forgetting that his death resulted in me receiving not a single penny? The court is already aware of the contract between myself and the victim, no? There's a contract, that's very true. The motive for this case runs deep though. I can feel it. Wie sieht die Unterschrift auf dem Contract nochmal aus? Assman. Okay, es ist dieselbe Unterschrift. Using threats to force the head of the forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme. Especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place. If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Assman's life would have made no sense anyway. Which means, Mr. Dweber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Assman. But why? What was his motive then? Your time is up, my learned friend. I'd say you have one last chance, before the jury loses their patience with this charade. Let's see if you can back up your heady proposal, shall we? How do you explain why this engineer would throw all caution to the wind and threaten his own country? At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence. Alright, who exactly was Mr. Assman to Dweber? There's a connection there that no one's seen yet. And I'm going to have to present 2 pieces of evidence to show what it is. Yes, my lord. The evidence that establishes the motive and explains why the witness wanted the victim dead is right here. Puh. Also ich würde jetzt sagen der Nachrichtenartikel, weil da der Name draufsteht von Assman.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord. That was written 10 years ago, and every detail has been examined already. What can it possibly tell us? That devil should never have been written. It's typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing. Oh, ach so, natürlich. Weil Assman das geschrieben hat und ihm damit seinen Universitätsposten geklaut hat. Aber 10 Jahre später das dann zu machen? 10 ganze Jahre später ist ein bisschen spät, oder? Yes, on its own, it isn't particularly significant. However, when considered alongside another piece of evidence, it will completely explain your motive for wanting Mr. Assman dead. What other evidence? Counsel, you will present your supplementary evidence without delay. The evidence, which ran cross-reference with the newspaper article, establishes motive for the deed. Okay, speichern. Und dann überlegen. Armband, das wird es nicht sein. Great Exhibition newspaper, a newspaper containing various articles about the world-leading science and technology and showed the Great Exhibition being held in London. The Reaper attacked. Lost cat. Experiment sketch. A diagram showing the relative positions of the Crystal Tower and Professor Harebraine's machine that exploded. Das denke ich auch mal nicht. Crossbow. A crossbow found hidden behind a tree on the experimentation stage at the exhibition grounds. It belongs to Mr. Enoch Streber. Das denke ich auch eher nicht. Die Musik untermalt gerade übrigens sehr gut die Spannung. A torn piece of canvas-like material bagged with rubber that was found under the experimentation stage at the exhibition grounds. There are scorch marks at the edges. Photograph of the victim. A photographic print of the victim taken after he had ostensibly been beamed to the Crystal Tower. It shows an apparent stab wound to the chest. Ich glaube, hier ist auch nichts. Autopsy report. The autopsy report of the victim, Mr. Assman. His neck was broken from the impact of a violent fall and he was stabbed in the chest with a sharp object. Details: name, O.D. Assman, British und so weiter. Hemorrhage, bla bla. Okay, das hilft uns auch nicht weiter. Screwdriver. A metal screwdriver that was found poking through the grill in the base of what remains of the kinesis machine. It's a very distinct handle. Okay. Photograph of the balloon. A photograph taken by Gotts when he was riding in a balloon. It shows another balloon that he claimed was green and exploded moments after he took his shot. Auch nicht. The wooden cage that was used for the demonstration crashed down with the victim inside into the Crystal Tower, causing damage to its base. Auch nicht, I guess. Photograph of Streber. A photographic print of the engineer, Mr. Enoch Streber. It's hard to make out, but he appears to be wearing a monocle with black glass. Und hier so ein Kreuz. Puh. Gucken wir uns nochmal das Tatortfoto an. Okay, er trägt kein Sonnenkreuz. Piece of broken glass. A small fragment of very unusual and thick glass that was found in the folds of the clothing of the Professor Wexler. It appeared to be from the Crystal Tower. A Royal Society trophy for excellence in science that was found in Mr. Dover's room. Prestigious award for a young scientist. Das vielleicht? Weil das ja seine Science zeigt? Ich probier's mal.
Take that!
I think it's fair to say that after your presentation of evidence, Counsel, we have only half the story. That's right, my lord. Which is why I just presented another piece of evidence to complete it. Okay, das war falsch. Okay, my learned friend only had half an education. Okay. The head of the Professor Wax was stolen from the Madame Tussauds exhibit. The autopsy report of the mass murderer. The investor mit der hierbei Interest in the contact with provider Mr. Energy to fund labor and materials for the construction of a super high voltage instantaneous kinesis machine to receive 30%. Both contributing parties are alive. Das hier vielleicht, weil da dieselbe Unterschrift drauf ist?
Take that!
Eyes up, okay. It's this contract, my lord. Mr. Drebber, this is the contract you signed with Mr. Assman. Yes, that's right. The very document, in fact. That proves I had no reason to kill the man. No, I'm afraid not. What? There's something very significant that this newspaper article and the contract have in common. Really? And it's that common link that shows very clearly why you are determined to kill Mr. O.D. Assman. It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these two pieces of evidence have in common. Where exactly is the link between this newspaper article and the contract? Der Link ist genau hier, Barock. What these two pieces of evidence have in common is a signature. A signature. The signature on the illustration that accompanies the 10-year-old article and the signature on the contract belong to the same person. What? Ah! As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about his ordeal. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen in the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed between the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Assman's signature at the bottom. Let me see now. Good lord, yes, they are identical. In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. O.D. Assman. Wow!
Objection!
But explain to the court why. Why would that constitute a motive for the witness to murder Assman? Well, if you think back, you remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It cost me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with a bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. Phew. At the time, you were a student of the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life. So Mr. Assman used to be a newspaper journalist, did he? He did, my lord. In fact, it's a widely held belief that Assman managed to position himself at the heart of his criminal network thanks to the many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter. So you had to give up on your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. And all because of that article, written by Mr. Assman. Enough! stop this endless drivel about my life. What? Explain yourself, Dweber. Mr. Dweber. Yes, it's true. I had to leave the university as a result of that article. But it was just a straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research. But they struggled on with the hypothesis anyway. We all did. Only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other after all. Good gracious. Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only a select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses, so it was hardly a wrench. Being forced out of the university because of Lowgate was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Objection!
Mr. Dweber, do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do! Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? And I have evidence to prove it. Der Pokal? How dare you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. Fine, if you think you have evidence, go ahead, show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave the university because I lacked talent? Science trophy.
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Dweber? We found it at your workshop. Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? What exactly is this trophy, Council? It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There's no higher accolade. It recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious! Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Dweber? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future. Your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asman was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life, it's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. The truth is... Finally, he's going to fold. Okay. Huh. Fine. Clearly this has run its course now. What? I admit it. All of it. What? What are you doing? It's exactly as a Japanese man said. I was cursed into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim, on the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago. No. Good Lord! Dr. Thies. So you realize, do you realize what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day, when I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the birdcage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I'd done my best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note, tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Seiss, you will go along with my plan. From someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night, 10 years ago. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Alles klar. Why on earth would you buckle now? Well, there's no point trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborate in a murder. But the great lie about that execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything. Surely it goes without saying. You admit your part in it too, then? I admit nothing at all. What? Have you forgotten that the kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting to a crime, there's really no possible way for you to prove I did anything wrong. No! Order! 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 Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Van Zieks. Yes. I hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course. I have heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper forum in which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber. The defendant is Professor Albert Hairbrain. Very true. It had slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends? As the court has heard, Dr. Seiss has admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt. You mean... At the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Okay. Das ist nice.